There's a mystery hidden in the very first verses of Genesis. In one moment, God is hovering, distant, silent, almost hesitant. His spirit moves gently above the waters. And in the next moment, God speaks, "Let there be light." Suddenly, the silence gives way to creation. What exactly shifted between these two moments, between verse 2 and verse 3 of Genesis? Why does God's posture change so dramatically from a hovering presence to a creative, active voice? And what does this transition reveal about the way divine light moves through and interacts with creation, and ultimately through each and every one of us?
Shalom everybody, and welcome back to Old Soul Torah. We're going into the first chapter of the Torah, Bereishit, Genesis chapter 1. And I always had this question about the transition between verse 2 and verse 3. I feel like we're missing a lot when we jump really fast from 2 to 3. So let's review just for a moment to see what I'm talking about. The first verse is Bereishit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz, and in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The second verse tells us that the earth was chaotic and unrefined. And it also, the verse 2 ends with the Spirit of God hovered, in Hebrew, merachefet, over the face of the waters, right? So, and then verse 3 says, and God said, "Let there be light." So what I'm interested in is, being that the Torah is a prophetic text, and everybody knows that prophecy means God's wisdom, God's revelation to us is often given in the language of symbols. So if this is a prophetic text, remember the Torah is not a history book. It's not claiming to be a scientific understanding of how the world came into being, but rather prophetic instruction for the advancement of our souls. So it's a manual, it's a text of spiritual development. And there's a lot to be learned in the 7 days of creation, or the 7 stages of creation. But I'm really interested in this, in what is the difference between merachefet and vayomer. What is, when God acts in verse 2, his spirit is hovering, not directly interacting, and not yet filling and forming and doing. He's hovering. The Zohar says that the hovering means is encompassing, surrounding. And the only other place that the Torah text uses the word merachefet, hovering, is when they talk about a mother bird that hovers over its young. And the Zohar continues to say that the hovering, the surrounding, is with love, is chesed. It's rachamim. Interesting, the word for love and compassion, rachamim in Hebrew, also is related to the word womb. A child, a fetus, develops in the womb of its mother. So the Hebrew word from compassion, rachamim, is related. It's the same word in Hebrew as womb. So when there's creation happening inside of a womb, the mother's love surrounds the womb. And this is what God's Spirit was doing when creation was still chaotic and unrefined. And the reason it had to hover and not go directly, because its light would have overwhelmed the creation. The world, which is a vessel, was not capable yet of receiving God's direct light. But in verse 3, all of a sudden, God's direct light God initiates this act of creation. And this is no longer God hovering, but getting directly involved. In fact, the universe, our Kabbalists teach us, are created through God's speech, which means emanations of God. Emanation in the form of vibration, right? Through divine will being emanated from the source, and through the divine will, or the divine vibration, the universe came into being through these 7 levels, 7 dimensions of creation. But let's get back to the original point. What is the difference between merachefet, hovering over, and vayomer, and when God speaks and says, declares, "Let there be light"? And what does this mean to us as people created in God's image, and how we should approach and interact with others, with the everyday world, and with our lives? So step one in this model of creation is to create sacred space. That before we start emanating, before our will is forwarded through speech or action, that first we need to hold sacred space. The hovering over, meaning if you see a chaotic situation, so hold it in light, in the vision of light, before you start to try to correct or fix it. So if the world is troubled, if your homeland is troubled, if your earth tribe is being challenged, then hold that tribe or region or nation or individual, hold them in light, surround them with the light of mercy and compassion, because they're going through a little bit of chaos and they won't be able to hear you right away. They won't be able to receive your help, or your intentions, or your words of wisdom. So when the moment comes that they're in a position to receive, after you've held a sacred space for them, then that's when you can let there be light. That's when you can will for them through instruction. And you can from your heart, you can emanate through words and actions. You can start to involve yourself. We also learn from this very powerful imagery in verse 2 and 3, we learn a second thing, and that is that there's two aspects of God's light, or God's presence, or his spirit, one which surrounds and one which fills. The light that surrounds is mesavev et ha'olam, and God's aspect that fills the world is memale et ha'olam. But also there's two types of light our soul has. There's or makif, which means the surrounding light of the individual. And remember, the Hebrew word for light is or, related to the word aura, or I should say aura is probably taken from the original Hebrew. It's the light that surrounds, the or makif, the surrounding light of a person. It's not necessarily visible to the human eye, although some people have trained themselves that they can see the light or energy field around the person. But the second type of light that we often negate, that we often don't pay as much attention to, is the or hapnimi. The or hapnimi means the inner light. So the Torah text is telling us there's a part of God's light that surrounds, and there's a part that fills. And so likewise, you should know that when you're in chaos, when you're in chaos and you can't hold your own weight, you can't hold yourself through it, you no longer have the strength, God in his mercy is surrounding you with his light, his presence. God's mercy and love is protecting you, shielding you when you're troubled, when you're in chaos and things in your life are not yet defined. And the second kind of light is when you are able, when you're in a place to receive, when you're in a place to listen and hear, when you're able to hear the message Shema Yisrael, listen or hear or internalize Israel, that the Lord our God, the Lord is one, that the great unity, that is the unity of this universe, is also the unity within you, the presence within you. And from that light within, we are healed, we are informed, we are guided. On this note, I'd like to say, God bless. Let's all hold each other in sacred light. Let's all hold each other in sacred space. And when you're ready to just begin to will your light, your godliness, through presence or through direct words, because both can fix the neshama and can heal the heart. God bless.
In a light, divine spark within the soul.